So I mean, we're dealing with volatile
Yeah.
young people who are deeply challenged and disturbed, and so if you ask, is there a, I mean, it is a deeply challenging job, and everybody in their role in the youth court, and we're talking about judges, about youth lawyers,
Yeah.
specialist youth police,
Yeah.
family conference coordinators, youth justice social workers. I mean, the courts get private, no one can be there unless they're involved in the case, but everyone's got a role.
Yeah.
I guess we're all trying in that 20 minutes with the young person to maximise that intervention, to ensure that it's respectful,
Yeah.
but it's direct, that it's straight, that it's collaborative, and there's that balance between authority and, I guess, I don't know if encouragement's the word, but authority and genuine and very clear attempts to encourage a young person to complete the set of responses that they need. And it can't just be done by a judge, but
Yeah.
neither can a judge.
So it's all those relationships and partnership.
Yeah,
Yeah.
precisely.
Can you talk to me a little bit about how you feel those partnerships work in regards to the youth courts? So you have the youth aid officer, you have the social worker, you have the family group conference coordinator. Can you tell me a little bit about what the strengths are in those partnerships?
Well, there's also an education officer who's we often have in some courts, and we're working
Not
hard
all.
to get them in all courts,
Yeah.
because really with 8 out of 10 kids disengaged from education, we need it. We we'll always have now a forensic nurse, someone who can see mental health issues. How that works? Well, we rely on that group to be meeting with each other regularly away from court, to building their own relationships, to developing understanding of each other's specialist role. And most of them will also meet with the judge once a month to talk about issues, how we can work better.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when a young person first comes to the youth court, you'd hope that the youth forensic nurse, if they thought there was a real issue with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder, with ADHD, with might be triggered some concern about maybe a brain injury, that would be talked about and flagged in court straight away, so it could be stood down for an assessment. An education officer might be there, so that we know this person's not been at school for 8 months, they've drifted out of school and alternative education, so we can stand it down so they can speak to the usually mother who is there, or wider family. Youth advocate will be saying, well, we maybe need a lay advocate here, someone who can be a supporter and spokesperson for the family to work with them. Police Youth Aid will be saying, yes, we agree, and there's an issue here about reparation that needs to be paid, and this case can't be resolved until we get that sorted out.
Yeah.
The family group conference coordinator will be saying, well, all these are issues that we'll need to be discussing at the family group conference. The social worker ought to be onto it then, saying, right, we need a collaborative approach. We need to get the school involved. We need to get drug and alcohol involved. We need to get mental health services involved. So already everyone in that team, in their role, will be starting to think, what are the issues for them and how can they work together to deliver the best package? So there'll be good preparation for the family group conference. It will come back to court with a plan that's in place.
So it sounds like that restorative justice process is not just, it also extends out to where they're also trying to address other issues that are going on for the young person. So it's not just the offending, it's also other issues that are going on.
Although even in your question, you make a distinction between, that's all right, other issues and offending. Two things are true, I think, about young people. They come with a constellation, sounds a fairly dramatic word, but they come with a group of issues in their life, usually very similar issues, which to some degree are causally related to the offending. And it's very hard to say more than related in a general sense, because you can't say what has caused the offending and what hasn't. But they're certainly risk factors. And the law requires the youth court and all those in the process to look at underlying causes. Now, in a sense, that's a bit simplistic, because, I mean, 3 young people might have the same issues in their life, but only 1 offends and 2 don't. It's an interesting question as to why that might be. Probably to do with strengths in their lives and resilience versus risk. But we need to look at all the issues in the young person's life if they are legitimately risk factors that could have caused the offending. So that is why all those things that I'm talking about have to be addressed, because it's highly unlikely that a young person's offending is going to be properly stopped without a multi-dimensional approach which looks at all those issues, which is not incidentally a warrant to go charging off and fixing every problem in a young person's life, but I'm talking about those clear issues that legitimately could be said to raise the risk of reoffending. And we know exactly what they are, we know the domains of the young person's life where that might be. So lots of interventions in a young person's life in the general sense look quite similar because the issues are similar.
And in regards to the young people engaging, like once it sounds like when they get to youth court, it's suddenly they're surrounded by this group of people who are trying to help them.
Absolutely, but also with a young person to varying degrees is going to be aggressive, resistant, uncertain, and
so that was some of the challenges for the young people, do you think, in engaging in that process? Would they have that resistance, or?
Yeah, I think young people want to know there's continuity, there's certainty. They need to know, in one sense, who's in charge of the team, that person's going to be there. We know that continuity of judge, that staying with a young person's really important, and that young people respect people who are honest, speak directly, don't try and solve everything at once, and who can deliver on what they say. So if we say, in 2 weeks' time, the Drug and Alcohol Council have been to see you, the education officer will have sorted out some education issues, you'll be at school, we need to make sure that's done. And I think that young people buy into processes when they feel not only respected, but actually feel it's being delivered. And it's not just talk. And I think it's one of the jobs of youth court judge too, is sort of the conductor of the system in a careful way, in a careful way. I think it is to ensure that adults also deliver on their promises for a young person, as well as a young person delivering on their obligations. I think that's fair to say. I think judges feel the whole system's let down if adults don't deliver on what's been agreed. I think young people are acutely aware of that.
Yes.
And bear in mind, we're dealing with young people who have been let down to various degrees all their lives by adults in their lives, especially close family.
So would you say that youth court is this opportunity for them to experience feeling supported and feeling as though adults are going to follow through, like it's this opportunity for that as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Amongst other things.
Amongst other things.
It's also an opportunity to hold them to account.
Yes.
And that
Not
sort of
forgetting
thing.
that.
Yeah. But no, you're dead right. And in fact, the whole youth justice process is the opportunity for that. Yeah.
So you sort of mentioned about adults needing to follow through with what they say they're going to do within that process. So can you talk about the challenges of working in partnership, like in regards to that relationship? So when you have that team of people working with the young person and they're offending, what would be some of the challenges within that relationship that you can see?
I mean, there are some very basic first principle challenges, which is being there and organising yourself so you can be there, and I think not making promises that you can't keep in front of a young person. I remember once early on in my time about to say to a young person who breached their bail, about to say this was the last time it would happen, otherwise there'd be consequences. And before I did, she said, "I know what you're going to say." And she basically repeated word for word what I was going to say. I said, "How did you know that?" She said, "Well, the other 6 judges have seen me have said the same thing too, but nothing's ever happened." I looked back over the file, and sure enough, there were 5 or 6 judges, just by virtue of the way the roster was organised in the adult system. That's how the system operated, and we made a real decision early this century to ensure continuity of judge, and that came with its cost. Smaller group of judges sitting more often, developing specialties.
Yeah.
The same commitment was made by everybody in the team. So when you say what are the challenges, well, the first one is to make sure the team's there. I think talking, sharing information, regularly monitoring progress, good casework meetings. I mean, it needs to be done in a sense in quite a sophisticated way, and that's what ensures, at least provides the best platform for buy-in by the young person, if that's the sort of thing that you're asking for.
Yeah.
Then, of course, there are challenges to make it work with the young person's family, because, I mean, there's not much point getting good buy-in from the young person if the family is still sitting on the sidelines, ambivalent as to what's going on. So the law actually provides for a court appointed, what's called a lay advocate, which is really a family or whānau advocate and cultural advisor.
What are the differences you can see with
Oh,
having
well,
that?
I think the first way it helps is we get information from the lay advocate that we don't, or that families don't so easily deliver to government workers, child, youth and family or police. I mean, a community-based person who understands the family is likely to get different sorts of, and often deeper information about what's going on, so that helps. They can also ensure that the family aren't spectators but are involved with the young person sitting next to them, and can help a family to see that families may need to change themselves in terms of violence, in terms of supporting educational attendance and achievement, in terms of community involvement, in terms of helping good choice of friends, in terms of obeying bail rules and curfews and that sort of thing. So I think that's been an important part of youth court process. In fact, the more I see it, the more I realise that the process works best when we've got the biggest team touching the widest amount of domains and parts of a young person's life. That's when the youth court process works best. Where it works worst is with a judge, police officer and such. Personalities might change and we just check up every 2 weeks, but there's no real continuing, enduring intervention in the young person and their family's lives. I mean, without that, we're going through the motions in the youth court.